Hey guys, how you going? Hey guys, you worried about the effects of 5G radiation? Well, let me introduce you to the affiliate of this video. They're called EMF Harmonized, and they filter out the harmful RF waves that actually damage our DNA. Kids are also more susceptible to the RF waves than adults are, and what they do is EMFs clump together red blood cells and cause lots of problems. This technology prevents that. And as you can see, they have products for your phone, your tablet and your computer, as well as your body. You can actually buy these for your body. So if you'd like to help a fellow truther and help me out as well, please check out the affiliate link down below. They also actually have a video showing you the red blood cells, how they clump together with 5G radiation, and how this technology protects you from that. Okay guys, if you're interested, check out the affiliate link below. Thanks guys. Hey guys, I didn't post yesterday because I went and seen my grandchildren and I was out all day yesterday, so I didn't have a chance. But let's get back into all this. Paulie C at Pi Paulie says, Dan Andrews tells Victorians not to panic, but if you want to create panic, then call a media conference at 10:30 p.m. and introduce COVID restrictions. We've seen this before. Now, okay, there is no more investigative journalism. My cat's in the way of my microphone. There is no more investigative journalism. The only way that journalism is surviving these days is shock, fear, and pretty much gossip mag, like gossip mags used to be, gossip magazines. That's all the mainstream media is now. Be careful, don't believe a lot of what they say, or most of what they say. They probably give you 1% of truth while giving you 99% of lies. And I was listening to the radio while I was driving yesterday, and I heard, apart from a lot of bagging of Trump, which is just disgusting, I ended up turning it off when that came on, but before that, they were talking about news and a news article, and some kid, or actually teenager, had a broken leg from a sandcastle collapsing on them. And the news, the guys on the radio were talking about, well, how big was the sandcastle? And then they realised that they were only getting a part of the story. And I sort of thought, bingo, you've got one thing right out of everything you've just spoken about, you know. So people are starting to wake up. Even like I'm seeing a lot of people wake up, to be honest. Okay, this one from official source Troy at Troy E23, caught lying in 4K. Okay, Alexandria, occasional cortex here, is chucking a Jussie Smollett. If you don't know about this, that was fake, and so was this. The other day she got on video and cried about the police moving her to another building, saying that they were pretty much mean. And then this one from Lynn Wood, trial lawyers, to Paula J. Friedrich, General Counsel. Dear Paula, per our recent telephone conversation, I'm enclosing a thumb drive containing a compilation of some of the compelling evidence of what just happened. The thumb drive also contains the interview of a very credible whistleblower whose statements provide substantial support for my public comments about former Vice President Mike Pence, John Roberts, and the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, and Rod Rosenstein, the former Deputy Attorney General. This evidence must be considered in connection with the complaints filed against me by out-of-state non-client citizens and in connection with reported claims that the State Bar intends to request that I submit to a mental health care examination. I accept that the State Bar of Georgia will thoroughly investigate this evidence and provide it to any and all law enforcement agencies responsible for investigating and prosecuting these types of crimes. Between now and February 12, I will be providing you and State Bar with additional evidence which must be considered in resolving the above referenced complaints filed against me by out-of-state non-client citizens. As always, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And that is pretty interesting. Really interesting, actually. Now let's go over here. I think by the end of this video I'm probably going to be crying, and so will some of you. And I really apologise about that. I've got to go back to where I started from, which is on the financials. I'm just trying to get there. Okay. So let's scroll back down again. Okay, I'll go and find where I'm up to. Oh, here it is, right here. There you go. Okay, forwarded from Silence Do-Good, MBA. Keith Schiller has been Mr. T's secret weapon for decades. Mr. T's Praetorian Guard. Mr. T's secrets are his intelligence gathering operations. Pictures with Jeffrey Epstein in 1992. He was gathering intel. Owned casinos and hotels. Gathering intel. This is so much bigger than anyone knows. Sun Tzu and Mr. T, the art of spies. And there is a... let's have a look. In just 6 days this month, 5 political careers burnt to the ground. On 5th of February 2019, Elizabeth Warren was exposed as a liar and charlatan, having lied about her Native American ancestry to advance herself for decades. Then between 6th and 11th of February, the careers of Virginia politicians and swamp rats, Ralph Northam, Justin Fairfax, Mark Herring and the corrupt Tony Norman, were all destroyed in a complex, extremely well-planned and calibrated takedown. Yes, they're all trying to keep going, but don't worry, there'll be more hits coming if required. All of the above are done. As you will see in this piece, these events aren't random. In fact, they're connected. And the path leads back to a specific date, the 20th of September 2017. Ending and beginning, resignation and winter offensive. On the 20th of September 2017, Mr. DJT's Deputy Assistant and Director of Oval Office Operations resigned. The resignation was exactly 8 months after the day of Mr. T's inauguration. His name was Keith Schiller. In Schiller's 2 powerful White House positions, he would have had a broad security clearance as well as unique access to Mr. T's schedule, communications and strategic thinking. He would have also been able to observe the swamp in detail, identifying the enemies of the Republic at work. The cover story was that Schiller was heading into retirement. Fake news was ecstatic at the departure of one of Mr. T's key allies. They spun it as yet another sign of Mr. T's collapsing administration. It was reported that Mr. T was heartbroken. Keith Schiller faded away into the shadows. After a few weeks, Mr. T's arrogant and distracted enemies had moved on and appeared to have forgotten him. As we will see, this was a major error on their part, a monumental error. You see, Schiller's resignation wasn't evidence of Mr. T's retreat. Far from it, it was the beginning of a winter offensive carried out by warriors hidden in shadows. Mr. T's Praetorian Guard. Their first blow came on October the 5th, 2017. Weinstein. It's probable that Schiller left the White House on Friday 30th of September 2017. What happened just 5 days later on Wednesday, October the 5th? Harvey Weinstein's career imploded. On October the 5th and 6th, the New York Times lit the fuse, breaking news of Weinstein's years of lechery. On October the 10th, the bomb exploded. The New Yorker laid bare Weinstein's years of sexual deviance. And the Weinstein bombshell wasn't just a devastating hit for Hollywood and the major stars that protected the deviant or turned a blind eye. It also damaged the politicians who protected Weinsteins, the Clintons, the Obamas and the Democratic Party. Coincidence? I think not. And remember, this happened before the Me Too movement had any pulse. I will return to other hits meted out by Schiller's crew below. But first, let's find out more about them. Okay, Shadow Warriors, Mr. T's Praetorian Guard. Many forget that Schiller has been Mr. T's feared Director of Security since 2004. A law enforcement veteran himself, Schiller had assembled a private army of ultra-loyal PLS, ex-cops, FBI agents, spooks, military veterans and detectives, well before Trump began his GOP primary run in 2015. Such a Praetorian Guard must have been extremely important for a billionaire such as Mr. T. The US and global construction sector is one of the most dangerous, toughest business environments in the world. In that sector, the ability to deter or defeat enemies, many who wouldn't think twice about attacking you or your family, isn't just a question of good strategy, it's a question of survival. Of course, this private army was used by Trump as he prepared to win the ultimate prize, the presidency itself. And I'm slipping every now and then. When did Mr. T commit? Experts such as Thomas Wichter, Saul Monte Bradley and Brian Cates, as well as many other analysts, have concluded that Mr. T probably planned his presidential run about 30 to 40 years ago. Mr. T is on record as considering and rejecting it as a mean life in 1980. In hindsight, his 2000 campaign is better understood as a preliminary taste rather than a serious attempt. It's difficult to pinpoint when he felt the timing was right to seriously commit to a White House run. But Mr. T's anger and mounting concern about the direction and corruption of the Obama administration was clear. In my view, Trump decided to activate his plan in 2012 when Obama was re-elected. However, it's probable that he started preparing many years beforehand by virtue of his wealth and power. Mr. T himself had unique access to the highest levels of power for decades. Using the Donald, a caricature he invented to deceive his enemies, it's likely he would have been able to also obtain damning information that he could pass on to Schiller. There's also little doubt that by 2015, Mr. T's Praetorian would have been relaying back to Trump more and more alarming intelligence about the criminality of Obama, Clinton and their swamp enablers. How are they obtaining information? Through the use of spies. Sun Tzu and Mr. T, the use of spies. As I have argued repeatedly for years, anyone who seeks to understand Mr. T's strategic genius must become familiar with Sun Tzu. The type of operation led by Schiller is consistent with Mr. T's mastery of Sun Tzu principles from The Art of War. A key principle that the ancient master strategist handed down was the importance of gaining intelligence through the use of spies prior to committing any significant conflict. Quote, "Thus what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. Now this foreknowledge cannot be elicited from spirits, it cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculation. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men, hence the use of spies." In my opinion, well before 2015, Mr. T and Schiller had built a vast network of spies in politics, entertainment, media, law enforcement, who would have been passing on every item of gossip about specific individuals and organisations deemed as threats to Schiller and his team. At ground level, this would have encompassed doormen, limo drivers, couriers, electricians and plumbers, hot dog sellers, janitors, receptionists and secretaries. In other words, normal people who may have had no idea the information they were passing on was for use by Mr. T himself. This would have created a huge flow of information that could be triaged, evaluated, confirmed and filed for future use by Schiller and his experts. The offensive continues. I mentioned the Weinstein takedown above, which started in October the 5th, 2017, a week after Schiller left the White House. But Weinstein was just the start. As the aftershock spread through the American public, more sexual allegation bombs dropped on Mr. T's enemies. Through the winter of 2017-18 in late October, Kevin Spacey was exposed. NBC's Matt Lauer was also exposed and sacked. Then between December 2017 and January 2018, a number of anti-Mr. T Democrats and Republicans were plunged into a public scandal, resulting in their resignations. By January 15, there were more congressional resignations in one session than at any time in the last 117 years. Yes, and the media were reporting that on as Trump's administration falling apart, and it wasn't. It wasn't. We've never seen congressional resignations like this before. On January 15th, Pat Tiberi became the 12th member of the 115th Congress to resign from office. If that feels like a lot, that's because it is. It's the most people who've resigned from Congress through this point in the session in the last in at least 117 years. As 2018 unfolded, the offensive continued. By November 2018, 104 Congress members, 23%, were leaving, the highest percentage since 1974. But damage was being melted out across media, Hollywood, and in politics outside Congress as well. There isn't sufficient space here to cover them all, but the list is long. They include, for example, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, May 2018. Which brings us to 2019. Elizabeth Warren, Ralph Northam, Justin Fairfax, Mark Herring, Tommy Normet. We were seeing enemies of the Republic, Democrats, and corrupt GOP swamp critters under assault. And it's still only February. The MO, intelligence, preparation, timing, and deniability, unlike the allegations against Mr. T himself, which are never supported by any credible evidence and hence always fail, there is an MO that connects many of these takedowns and indicate that Trump's Praetorian are almost certainly behind him. The key indicator is professionalism. These attacks use the tradecraft of experienced spooks, intelligence, preparation, timing, and deniability. After analysing these hits in some detail, I can identify 5 key characteristics. First, the targeting is always strategic. Second, there's always credible evidence that is produced to back up the allegation. Third, the evidence is leaked to the media in a way that they cannot ignore. Fourth, those behind the hits keep damning information back using only what they required to achieve the objective. Fifth, the execution is always timed for maximum impact, which is evidence of detailed planning. And while these hits are almost always targeting Trump rivals and enemies, have you noticed there's another characteristic they share? Mr. T always seems a million miles away from them. Again, this is consistent with Sun Tzu's strategy. But if you examine the timeline, you'll find that there has been a non-stop assault since October 2017, using a very similar MO every time. And it kicked into full gear 1 week after Keith Schiller disappeared into the shadows. 2019 endgame for Trump's enemies. It's important to remember that when the offensive began late in 2017, Trump's enemies were far stronger than they are now. In 2019, the tables have reversed. Trump is the ascendancy and his enemies have very little protection left, apart from a fake news complex that is declining in influence and power 24/7. Arrogant, lazy, and not very intelligent, they've been outmaneuvered by brilliant strategists such as Trump, and very professional operators such as Schiller and his team, who know how to wreak havoc from hidden places. Be in no doubt, as 2019 unfolds, Trump's Praetorian will continue to rain hell on Trump's enemies, who must be terrified at what's coming. Some may not approve of these tactics. In normal times, I would tend to agree, but as we all know, these are not normal times. The enemies of the Republic are evil, cruel people who will stop at nothing to increase their power and wealth. This includes destroying the lives of innocent people or worse. I have no pity or sympathy for any of them. In this environment, we should be grateful for the work of men like Keith Schiller and Trump's Praetorian Guard, working in the shadows. They are helping to save the American Republic. And we can watch it in awe as they go about their work. And that is the end of that one. And that was very interesting. Let's continue. Okay, another one forward by Silence Do Good MBA. Ask yourself this: why do central banks loan money to banks? If the multiplier effect is so real to economists, why not just loan the money to individuals? These consumers either save the money in the form of bank deposit, or they spend their money at a business who then deposits that money in the bank. So in most cases, the bank still gets the money, except for it is a liability as opposed to an asset. But the bank's accounting tricks already play games to ensure compliance. The question is rhetorical because the answer is already known. We live in a world of illusion. We live in a fiat money system that is controlled by a handful of people around the globe. It's time to rip the band-aid off once and for all. The destruction of our real monetary system started in 1913 with the creation of the Fed and was ultimately disassembled in 1933 with the confiscation of our nation's gold, which is a real store value and has been for 5,000 years. Even bankers were scared of the Federal Reserve and central bank system. Take, for example, the ECB. They are now loaning out money to any Eurozone country in the form of giving money to the largest banks to lend out. The ECB has abandoned what they had called self-imposed constraints and purchase whatever bonds they want from any country at any duration, furthering the distortion of money in Europe. Taxes are also a big scam, as the money flows to a handful of people, politicians and the top wealthy elites as well. We nearly pay more interest than we do for the entire military budget, yet our politicians, voted in by we the people, have authorised the Federal Reserve to print the money and collect the interest, even though our Constitution says that this is supposed to be the Treasury's job, and to do this without interest. We have basically submitted ourselves to this slave world of indebtedness, and we are the only ones that will free ourselves by rising to the challenge and breaking free through truth and free will. And that's very true. And if you watch the Money Masters or the Money Makers, like I said yesterday, it will start to make a whole lot of sense what is happening right now, along with what I'm telling you now. Okay, let's look at the top shareholders, again from Silence Dogood at MBA. Let's look at top shareholders of the top military contractors for America, who we call the corporate or bankster warlords, to see what connections they might have to the British Crown's investments. The Vanguard Group, State Street Corp, Capital Research Global Investors, Templeton Investment Council LLC, Barclays Bank PLC, BlackRock Investment Management UK Ltd, Schroeder Investment Management, Capital World Investors, Bank of America Corporation, JP Morgan and Chase and Co, Bank of New York Mellon Corp, BlackRock Advisors, BlackRock Fund Advisors, Old Republic International, Wellington Management Company, BlackRock Institutional Trust Company NA, Evercore Trust Company NA, FMR LLC, Investco Ltd, Franklin Resources, Goldman Sachs Group Inc, T. Rowe Price Group Inc. These big four companies control the world, yet you've probably never heard of them. What is worth noting about this list is that you can find some of the usual suspects: Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, Warburgs, and the rest of the banker warlords behind some of these names. To make things even more complex so that we can never figure out who's in charge, every one of these corporations owns major shares in every other corporation. They are entwined like a grapevine. If we look closer, we find that every one of these corporations conducts international business and is invested in international military ventures. This type of corporate warfare is transnational. It is beyond being international or global. These companies work outside of the control of America as a nation and have stronger ties to Britain than to America. They work against Americans with their transnational economic warfare and make money from both sides of any conflict. Exposed, all the Queen's agents and corporations that control the world. And I'm not sure, I think there's a video in there. There is also, looks like the Humans Are Free website. Yep. Okay, I might go into this and read this as well. I've got a lot to go through, so it's going to be a while. Make a cuppa, grab a drink, whatever you want to do, and just relax and listen. Okay, exposed all the Queen's agents and corporations that control the world. We may not realise it, but we are still subjects of the British monarchy. American history books and classes indoctrinated propaganda us into believing we had won the American Revolution, but we didn't. We are still subjects of Queen Elizabeth. The history books were written by the victors and their big publishing houses, and it was much easier to control the new colonies by letting them think they had won their independence, while the British Crown carefully lay their tentacles throughout America. Tentacles that grew stronger and stronger with every passing year. We aren't the America we think we are. That's the big red pill. Most of us on planet Earth are still under the Queen's rule. This is why I don't like them, and I don't think we should have a monarchy at all, with no kings, no queens, no nothing. Okay, to get started with the real history of who runs planet Earth, we suggest that you listen to this conversation between Betsy and Thomas. They will explain the big picture, then you will be ready to read the report that follows. And it's obviously going to be this Queen's prerogative. English law prohibits questioning the monarchy about their personal holdings and business. This is true of most of Europe's royalty, whether enthroned or not. The wealth of monarchies is held outside of the countries that made the wealth. The British Crown's offshore banks hold the greatest personal wealth in the world, estimated at $35 trillion. Perhaps the British Crown still owns and controls its Commonwealth nations, including American colonies. And I've got to fly. Okay, that's one way to get them out. I just lit up a cigarette and the fly flew out of the room. Back out the door. Good stuff. Monarchies are not supposed to be warlord bankers who create conflict and chaos to turn a profit or destabilise an economy for personal gain. But they have been for some time now, and history is a string of immoral wars caused by monarchies, the Vatican and other religions. Untold millions have died while kings and popes lived on to grab the wealth through well-established institutions that were created to control the commoner. The Commonwealth of Nations, headed by Queen Elizabeth II, is made up of 53 nations spanning the globe, accounting for 1/5 of the land mass of the Earth and a very high percentage of its strategic resources and population. The Queen is a Knight of Malta and has vowed allegiance to the Pope through the largest insider trading club on the planet. The British are in fact also agents of the Vatican's Knights of Malta. The Queen is a Knight of Malta. And there's obviously another video or link here, but I can't. Doesn't look like I can click it. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta, SMOM, took control of the power and wealth of the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon from within the Roman system. The SMOM controlled the banking and military power for the Vatican for hundreds of years through the first central bank, the Vatican Bank. The Roman Catholic priestly order of the Jesuits, Society of Jesus, subordinated the SMOM in 1798, aided by Napoleon Bonaparte. This would eventually lead to the Jesuits installing British control over the island Malta and the founding of a Jesuit college manned by British Jesuits. The Jesuits became somewhat crippled by this suppression in Catholic-controlled Europe, so in order for the Jesuits to secure South American wealth, they used Protestant banking houses and formed an alliance with the Venetian influences over Britain, like the Pallavicini family, who controlled the monarchy, and the Rothschilds. The Jesuits in 1840 put the Hause, Sachsen, Coburg and Gotha bloodline into the position of monarchy of Great Britain. This house is known today as the Windsor House, which still rules the UK and the Commonwealth nations. Oh dear. The same fate would eventually happen to the Vatican itself after suppressing the Jesuits in 1773. The Jesuit order took control of the papacy by 1814 and had enacted revenge once again for their persecution. The Order of Malta and the recognised Protestant divisions all play a role commanded by the Jesuit order. This includes the most venerable order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, controlled by Queen Elizabeth II. If you look at the last Grand Masters of the Order of Malta, you will notice they came from Britain. Former Grand Master Andrew Willoughby, Ninian Bertie, was a cousin to Queen Elizabeth II. It originated within the Grand Priory of England. The British arm of the Order of Malta controlling St John's Wood is also known as the Grand Priory of England. This location was once also a Knights Templar headquarters in Britain. The Order of Malta even owned Londinium, the City of London. The City of London was eventually rented out by the Order of Malta as their headquarters. The Jesuits took over the Londinium in 1825, aided by the Rothschild family, who had become the most powerful economic force in England. When you take a look at many of the influential positions of power today, whether it's in banking, military, pharmaceutical or intelligence, you will always find Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta are mainly involved in working for and with the black nobility, royalty without an active throne. The Vatican, the various papal and royal orders, especially the Jesuits, who are ultimately in control of the Vatican, and the Military Order of Malta. The SMOM's most powerful controlling inner cores are the Order of the Garter and the Pilgrim Society, which are controlled by the Queen. When you look at who controls the financial world, you'll find that it's Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, Order of Malta and Opus Dei, through the City of London Corporation and the Worshipful Company of Mercers, and more recent, the Worshipful Company of International Bankers. Corporations run the world: City of London, Washington DC and Vatican City. 1/3 of all wealth is held offshore, and about half the world trade flows through those tax havens, the Tax Justice Network. James S. Henry, former chief economist at McKinsey & Company, estimates that wealthy individuals have approximately $35 trillion in private financial wealth tucked away in offshore havens, with $6.1 trillion in UK-dependent states. As a result of this offshore accounting, it's estimated that 60% of global trade now consists of internal transactions within multinational companies. In total, it's estimated that this complex corporate offshore accounting multinational corporations avoid paying about $240 billion per year in taxes. The City of London, UK is now the money laundering capital of the world, with UK firms aiding corrupt officials and criminals from across the globe to hide trillions of US dollars of ill-gotten gains. British-based banks have helped hide more than $6 trillion in nefarious payments and criminal proceeds since 2000. Cayman Islands benefit from the added support of being a territory of the United Kingdom. The Cayman Islands offer a number of tax-free incentives and little financial regulation and oversight. Today, the country is the world's 5th largest financial service centre. It plays host to over 10,000 mutual funds, over 200 banks, over 90,000 companies, and 140 trust companies. It's the world's top home for hedge funds and captive health insurance companies. Bermuda is another piece of UK territory that has long been known as a tax haven. Bermuda's tax system puts tax on staff payrolls, but not on corporate earnings or investment income. Its largest customer for offshore transactions is the United States. Guernsey belongs to the British Crown but makes its own laws on matters such as taxation. The island of 65,000 people has made a big push towards being an offshore finance destination, and its main street is lined with private banks, law firms and accounting firms. Jersey is another small British Crown dependency in the English Channel. Jersey prints its own banknotes and makes its own tax laws. A culture of secrecy and non-disclosure in the island has resulted in Jersey housing an estimated $5 billion of wealth per square mile. Half of Jersey's tax avoidance trade comes from the UK. The British US Federal Reserve. Using the first major corporation in England as their model, the British East India Company warlord bankers starts wars for profit. Slavery and the looting of mines, gold, diamonds, minerals and land is all in a day's work for an imperialist. England's imperialism has worked into the economic and banking practices worldwide, and the Queen's Crown agents and agencies have controlled global resources for centuries. There's a linear connection between the Rothschilds, the Bank of England and the London banking houses, which ultimately links the stockholders of the Federal Reserve banks to their subsidiary firms in New York and the City of London, UK. The two principal Rothschild representatives in New York, J.P. Morgan Co. and Kuhn, Loeb and Co. were the firms which set up the Jekyll Island Conference, at which the Federal Reserve Act was created and directed. the subsequent successful campaign to have the plan enacted into law by Congress, and who purchased the controlling amounts of stock in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 1914. Case closed. JFK killed after shutting down Rothschild's Federal Reserve. These firms had their principal officers appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and the Federal Advisory Council in 1914. In 1914, a few families, blood or business related, owning controlling stock in existing banks caused those banks to purchase controlling shares in the Federal Reserve regional banks. Examination of the charts and text in the House Banking Committee Staff Report of August 1976 and the current stockholders list of the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks show this same family control. The Queen loves war spoils. Now let's look at the top shareholders of the top military contracts for America, who we call the corporate or bankster warlords, to see what connections they might have to the British Crown's investments. Which then continues to go over the companies I just mentioned. What is worth noting about this list that you can find some of the usual suspects, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgan, Warburgs, and the rest of the bankster warlords behind some of these names, to make things even more complex so that we never figure out who is in charge. Every one of these corporations owns major shares in every other corporations. And I've read that bit. Essentially, these British and international corporations are war criminals, just like Henry Schroeder, the Brit who funded both Hitler and England. This type of banking warfare is common throughout British history. These were the elite families behind Hitler and Nazism, and there's a link there. The Crown's money-making war machine. Essentially, all conspiracies about the Queen of England have some merit after following the money back to the warlord bankers who set up the US Federal Reserve. But unlike most conspiracy theories suggest, the Federal Reserve regional banks are not the true culprits. The true culprits are the original investors in the corporations listed above, who serve the military through all types of wars, physical conflicts, cyber warfare, and economic terrorism. It is the interwoven fabric of the investments of the war-supporting corporations that have created a system that is inbred and tied to Britain and then to Rome. Simply through the association of the royal families of the world, who are members of the Knights of Malta, you have an economic intelligence community that is comprehensive insider trading at a transnational level, as we all just saw with GameStop. The monarchies must protect their financial interests and pass wealth onto their family members. That is why so many of the richest families intermarry, to keep it all in the family. The richest and most powerful people in the world belong to the Knights of Malta, the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, the Order of the Garter, the Teutonic Knights, and other orders that vow allegiance to the British Crown and subsequently to the Vatican. If we wish to broaden the perspective, one can add that the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, which I've read, Lizzie owns it all. The evil, evil person. British and private intelligence agencies. The UK has many private intelligence agencies who are devoted to the collection and analysis, my goodness, it took me a while, sorry guys, and exploitation of information for a profit. Christopher Steele, the author of the Carter Page dossier, was a former British spy, which shows you the unethical nature of British spying. 63, Orbis Business International, Cambridge Analytica, and many other British private intelligence agencies sell propaganda as intelligence. Often these corporations have private contract with the US military and government and maintain top secret security clearances with the United States. Britain has not shown itself to be honest spies, as is evidence in the Iraq weapons of mass destruction lies and the current British disinformation coming out of Syria. And just some insight, this is how you tell if people are believing mainstream news or not. If you believe that Trump bombed Syria, then it's easy to tell where you got the information from. Some US $56 billion or 70% of the US $80 billion national intelligence budget of the United States was in 2016 earmarked for the private sector. Functions previously performed by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, the National Security Agency, the NSA, and other intelligence agencies are now outsourced to private British intelligence corporations. Some prominent British intelligence agencies who maintain military and government contracts within America are AEGIS, UK-based, Black Cube, Israel and UK-based, Control Risk Group, UK-based, Hackler and Company, UK-based, Oxford Analytica, UK-based, and Serco Group plc, UK-based. Can we really trust intelligence from a country that has provided false intelligence many times? It was the British intelligence itself that spied on Mr. T from the NSA's headquarters in Fort Meade. Lie to me once, shame on you. Lie to me twice, shame on me. Who really owns and runs the Bank of England? When the Jesuits were suppressed by the Pope in 1773, they used their covert power of England to have the Rothschild family become guardians over the Jesuits' South American stolen wealth instead of depositing it in the Vatican Bank. This action started a banking war between the Vatican and the Jesuits, who used the Rothschild family as the anti-Vatican bank. The Rothschilds eventually became the guardians of the Jesuit treasury in the City of London. The Rothschilds used the Worshipful Company of Mercers to create the Bank of England, which now held the Jesuits' wealth stolen from South America. The Bank of England's efforts were focused on taking over the City of London, UK, from Vatican control. The Knights of Malta have never been favourites of the Jesuit order. This hatred of the Knights of Malta increased even further in 1768, when the Knights removed the Jesuits from the island of Malta. The Jesuits sought their revenge 1 year later in 1798 using Napoleon. The Jesuits subordinated the Knights of Malta in the same year, and that was the true start of the takeover of the City of London, UK, which was still ruled covertly by the Knights of Malta. If you look at St John's Wood, where the Order of Malta are based, you will see it's the old haunt of the Knights Templar in England since the time that the City of London, UK became a sovereign nation. If you look at one of the four of the most powerful Order of Malta headquarters in Rome, you will see that the Aventine Hill is another old Templar haunt, which was their original world headquarters. The control of the Bank of England through the Worshipful Company of Mercers is what controls the global economy. The US economy is fully controlled by the Mercers and the Bank of England and has been since 1868. The City of London, UK controls the US economy through the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which subsequently controls the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. The CFR has set US foreign policy since its inception. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Council on Foreign Relations part of the UN? The City of London, UK controls that which subsequently controls the Federal Reserve of New York, World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The City of London, UK controls the US Treasury monetary policy, which commands all three of those globalist organisations through the Exchange Stabilisation Fund. Queen Lizzie's imperial control of America. The British Crown and the British East India Company have never left America, and in fact the Crown agents still do their business to this very day. They have a death grip on the US economy, from data management to corporate banking to the rip-off of American resources of gas, uranium, gold and every other valuable asset in the United States. American wealth feeds directly into Britain, the Bank of England, the City of London, UK, and ultimately to the British monarchy, Queen Elizabeth II herself. The American corporate mechanism for the continued enrichment of the British Crown is the same one used for the corporate sellout of the American Republic. Corporate lobbyists controlling Congress, corporate pay-to-play through the executive branch, Department of State, etc., and the Senior Executive Service, SES, to maintain the bureaucratic status quo that sells out to global corporatism at every turn with no big contracts and cronyism that clearly shows we are the subjects of British monarchy. The Senior Executive Service hides in plain sight but operates in a manner that aligns with the imperialistic intents of Serco and the numerous other corporations like British Petroleum, Shell, ICAP, British American Tobacco, SAB Miller, American Standard Life, Rio Tinto, and Strata, among many others. I'm not sure how to say that. I hope I said that right. The history of Crown Agents. A Crown Agency was the administrative body of the British Empire, distinct from the Civil Service Commission of Britain or the government administration of the national entity in which it operated. These enterprises were overseen from 1833 to 1974 by the Office of the Crown Agents in London, thereafter named the Crown's Agents for Overseas Governments and Administration. Crown Agents for Overseas Governments and Administrations Ltd became a private limited company providing development services in 1996. Crown agencies nominally reported directly to and were wholly owned by the Crown, but in practice reported to the Crown Agency Office in London, thus independent of the Colonial Office. This office became, in the late 19th century, the sole official British commercial and financial agent of all British protectorates and Crown colonies. The Colonial Office enforced a policy of sole usage of Crown agencies for all purchases of goods for government use, creating a virtual monopoly over government retail supply within the colonies of the British Empire. The Crown agencies also became financial institutions supplying capital, routes for investment and pensions to all public works and government in British dependent colonies. Is it even reasonable to believe that after the American Revolution, American companies did not continue to do business with these Crown companies for resources, goods and services? Life went on. Crown agencies traced their founding to the time of the British Empire, and in 1833 the British government hived off from the Colonial Office as a financing, stores, transport and development office. Historians have argued that Crown agencies, whose organisations operated across the British Empire in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were the de facto administrators of British colonies. Crown agencies wielded government powers through a maze of British territories, protectorates, dependencies, mandates and Crown colonies, which made up the British Empire of the late 19th century. After this, their mandate was reduced to dependent colonies, most of British Africa, India and the West Indies, but they were given near monopoly rights over finance and supply of non-local manufacturers for any public or government use. With the dissolution of the British Empire, many of these agencies reverted to control by their respective governments, became parts of the British government or became non-governmental organisations, NGOs. New World Order's stealthy tool of subversion, the NGOs. The British government incorporated the Crown Agency as a government-mandated corporation tied to the Minister of Overseas Development, called the Crown Agents for Overseas Governments and Administration in 1997. The Crown Agency was privatised. Wow, that says a lot for Australia too. As a private limited company, the GAOGA has a number of contracts to provide governmental or paragovernmental services throughout the world. Even though these organisations were privatised on paper, the power generally did not shift. It merely transformed into shareholder holdings and board of directors. The term golden share developed to describe special rights given to the Queen in a stock company that gave her special preferential rights over voting and profit distribution, and thus ultimate control, like she had before. While privatisation allowed more shareholders, the Queen generally continued to control votes and profit distribution in wild disproportion to her single 10 pence voting share, golden share in the mining mega company Rio Tinto plc, for example. In addition, whenever one sees that British royalties populate a company's board of directors, remember that these people who pledged an oath of allegiance to the Queen first, company second. The legal category of Crown agencies still exists in some nations of the former British Empire. In most places, these have been replaced by government agencies, state-controlled companies, and in parts of the Commonwealth, Crown corporations. Canada and New Zealand maintain the category of government-managed or owned entities called Crown agencies. I'm pretty sure Australia, because we've got Crown land that the Queen owns here in Australia, so I'm pretty sure we are part of that as well. Crown Agents International CAI is an international development company that works with governments, aid agencies, non-governmental organisations and companies in nearly 100 countries. Through consultancy, supply chain management and financial services, they help countries grow their economies, strengthen their health systems and improve financial management. CAI is headquartered in Sutton, Surrey, but has an established network of international offices, project offices or representatives in 40 countries. CAI is one of the world's leading experts in public procurement and supply chain management, and they provide financial services to facilitate development, focus on international payments and cash management, trade finance and investment management for donors, NGOs and financial institutions. Okay, Crown Agents USA Inc. It's going to be a long one, guys. I may not get to the bit where I said I was going to cry at the end of the video, so that might be a good thing. The following descriptions of the corporation, Crown Agents USA Inc., are taken from their website found at crownagents.com. Our story begins in the 1700s when colonial administrations employed agents to recruit people and procure and ship supplies to the colonies. Some agents had been authorised to manage British Treasury grants, and they had become known unofficially as Crown Agents. On the 1st of April, 1833, the British government appointed the first Joint Agents General for Crown Colonies, George Bale and Edward Bernard. Although appointed by the British Treasury, the Joint Agents General were accountable only to the governors of the 13 Crown colonies that they served. They managed grants, raised capital, recruited personnel and shipped supplies for their clients. Since our incorporation in the United States, we have provided technical assistance services and support to US government agencies, including the United States Agency for International Development, Millennium Challenge Corporation, Department of State, Department of Defense, and the US States Trade and Development Agency. We are an international development company that partners with government, AIDS agencies, NGOs, and companies in nearly 100 countries. We help them grow their economies, strengthen their health systems, blah, blah, blah. We have permanent offices in 22 countries and presence in another 18 through our project offices and representatives. We are a limited company owned by a non-profit making foundation. Oh, foundations. Beware of foundations. They're normally money laundering situations. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. The Crown Agents Foundation is our sole shareholder and oversees our ethos and activities. The Crown Agents Board is responsible for the company's corporate governance. We were founded in 1833 and operated as a British statutory corporation for many years before being privatised in 1997. Contracts with the USAID. As implementing partner of USAID, Crown Agents USA Inc. provides expertise in the areas of procurement, public financial management, logistics, health systems strengthening, private sector development, monitoring and evaluation, and agriculture. Here is a list of contracts that Crown Agencies USA has with America that Americans themselves could easily accomplish. United States Agency for International Development contracts, Worldwide Public Financial Management, IDIQ, worth $700 million. For example, here are 3 Crown Agents USA Inc. contracts with USAID associated with single indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, USAID Public Financial Management contract, read a blank check. And there's a lot of Crown Agents USA Washington DC, Federal Vendor Contracting Profile, AIDOAA, $23.7 million, and there's all numbers after them with, $6.6 million, $19 million. Worldwide Supply Chain Management System 2005 to 2015. Worldwide Farmer-to-Farmer Special Program Support 2008 to 2014. Worldwide USAID Deliver 1 and 2 Project 2006 to 2015. Worldwide Agribusiness and Agricultural Value Chain Development Assessment. I won't read the dates out. Worldwide Agricultural Knowledge and Program Support Work. Worldwide Climate Economic Analysis for Development, Investment and Resilience, Worldwide Business Growth Initiative, Worldwide Evaluation Services IQC, subcontracted to Amex International, Worldwide Macroeconomics Foundations for Growth IQC, Worldwide Policy Planning and Learning, okay, Evaluation and Research, Worldwide Rule of Law IQC, subcontracted to Democracy International, Rural Agriculture Income and Sustainable Development, Africa Indoor Residual Spraying 1 and 2. Huh? Okay. IQC, I don't know what that is, but sounds interesting. What are they spraying? Africa, COME SA countries, plus Tanzania, support for food security activities. Well, they're not doing a very good job of any of these, really. Asia and Middle East Growth Best Practices Project. Bangladesh Feed the Future Design and Initiation Project. Bangladesh Trade Facility Activity, subcontracted to IBI International. Bangladesh, Haiti, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, US Feed the Future System. This is not very good, is it? Egypt, Technical Assistance for Policy Reform 2, subcontracted to Bearing Point. El Salvador, Access to Financial Services Program. Ethiopia, Health Centre Renovation and Coordination Project. Ethiopia, Agricultural Growth Program, Agribusiness and Market Development. Guatemala, Policy and Regulation Economic Support for Economic Growth Project. Liberia, Roberts International Airport Equipment Procurement Program. Malawi, I hope I said that right, National Distribution and Management of Long Life Insecticide Treat Nets to Public Health Facilities. Wow. Nigeria Expanded Trade and Passport Program. Pakistan, Support for Privatisation Activity. Rwanda, Private Sector Driven Agriculture Growth. Tanzania, Strategies for the Prevention of Corruption Bureau, which doesn't that normally help the corruption? As we find out in some of our bureaus, they actually are enabling instead of fighting it. Tanzania, Staples Value Chain. Turkmenistan, Agricultural Technology Program. And Zambia, Production Finance and Improved Technology Plus Program. And then Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, contracts Ganda Financial. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to read all of this, guys, as it is. It's nearly going for an hour. Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement. Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs. Evaluation of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, Transnational Crime and Rule of Law Programs in the Russian Federation. Office of Environmental Quality and Transboundary Issues. Evaluation of the Nexus Dialogue on Water. You don't want them controlling your water, and oh my goodness. As it is, they're nearly controlling the food. El Salvador and Mexico Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, Impact Evaluation for Small Business Development Centers, Department of Defense and United States Trade and Development Agency contracts with Vietnam, National Single Widow Customs Project, Global DoD's Cooperative Threat Reduction Integration Contract 2, IDIQ, subcontracted to Raytheon, Botswana, US TDA Procurement Advisory Services to the Ministry of Minerals, Energy and Water Resources. Oh dear God. It's times like these when I read this and what I know that it looks actually like this thing just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So when they say the swamp is deep, I really am starting to understand how deep this is. It's huge. British control of American uranium enrichment. Another British corporation that has taken over the uranium enrichment market in America is the Uneco Group, that has gone to great extremes to hide the fact that Britain, Holland and Germany own and run the largest uranium plant in America. The Uneco Group is a nuclear fuel company operating several uranium-enriched plants in Germany, the Netherlands, United States and United Kingdom. It supplies nuclear power stations in about 15 countries and has 29% share of the global market for enrichment services in 2011. Ureneco uses centrifuge enrichment technology in New Mexico, subsidized by US taxpayers. In July 2012, it was reported that a sale of the government interests of Ureneco was being sought. Ureneco, headquartered in Stoke Poges in Buckinghamshire and registered in the UK, is 1/3 owned by the UK government, 1/3 by the Dutch government, the rest by two major German utilities, E.ON and RWE, 1/6 each. Urenco, sorry, I've been saying that wrong. Urenco also owns a 50% interest in enrichment technology company ETC, a company jointly owned with Areva. ETC provides enrichment plant design services and gas centrifuge technology for enrichment plants through its subsidiaries in the UK, Capenhurst, Germany, and I can't say those two, the Netherlands, France, and the US. Urenco USA. Somehow the British-owned Urenco company has the uranium market cornered in America. Located in southeastern New Mexico, the Urenco US facility began operations on June the 11th, 2010. Urenco USA is the first enrichment facility to be built in the United States in 30 years and the first ever using centrifuge enrichment technology. Urenco uses the US National Enrichment Facility as its plant for the enrichment of uranium in Inuncy, New Mexico. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, guys. The NEF is operated by Louisiana Energy Services, LES, which is in turn owned by the Urenco Group, just to make sure it looks like an American company. Notice the elaborate ownership of this facility hides who actually owns and benefits from this facility. Foreign nations directly benefit through the profits after US taxpayers pay 2/3 of the cost of building it. Since the dedication ceremony in October 2008, the company has grown to 236 employees with an annual payroll of USD $23 million at full capacity. NEF can provide 50% of the current enriched uranium demand for civilian nuclear power plants in the US. The NEF began operations in June 2010. The original proposed budget was $1.5 billion US, but this increased to $3 billion US for an enlarged facility capable of 5.9 million SWU at full capacity. Urenco USA's New Mexico enrichment facility, and now the Urenco corruption. Oh, okay. In the 1970s, Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan, who worked for a subcontractor of Urenco in Almelo, bought stolen drawings of the centrifuges operated by Urenco to Pakistan. In early 1974, Dr. Khan joined the uranium enrichment program and within a short span of time established a highly advanced uranium enrichment facility near Islamabad. In May 1985, the United Nations Council for Namibia decided to take legal action against Urenco for breaching UNCN Decree No. 1, which prohibited any exploitations of Namibia's natural resources under apartheid South Africa because Urenco had been importing uranium ore from the Rossing mine in Namibia. According to Greenpeace, Urenco has a standing contract with Russia for the disposal of radioactive waste. In reality, these contracts do not relate to the disposal of waste, but to the sale of depleted uranium tails, which are re-enriched to natural uranium equivalent. As the enricher, Russia would be the owner of any radioactive waste that results from this process. In March 2009, there were protests about the largest ever load of depleted uranium hexafluoride being transported from Germany to the Siberian town Seversk. British Petroleum's US retail. BP are in Australia as well. BP might as well stand for British Pirates. If you look at the record of company that flourishes in America, the home of the largest oil companies in the world, and pollutes and destroys environment in a country they don't live in, BP has a poor safety record and it looks like they just don't care about the American ecosystem. These British pirates, along with Shell, have fleeced America in every way concerning oil, from drilling to gas stations. From New York to San Francisco, British Petroleum has a network of retail stations that provide Americans with fuel, lubricants, and other products essential to modern transportation. The company's nationwide retail presence includes over 7,100 BP and Arco branded gas stations, along with close to 1,000 convenience stores. In 2016, BP delivered 7.3 billion gallons of BP branded fuel to its US customers. BP's upstream operating segment includes production from Prudhoe Bay area in Alaska and 4 production platforms in deepwater Gulf of Mexico, where BP is the leading leaseholder. In 2016, BP produced 676 1,000 barrels of oil per day, making the company one of America's largest oil and natural gas producers. How is it possible in America that US governmental agencies allowed the British invasion of our land, waters and streets? There is no reason that US oil rights should go to a foreign country for their profit. American oil should be processed and sold by American companies, not added to the portfolio of the Queen of England. Now, BP's crimes. BP plc is the company responsible for the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill. BP paid a record $20.8 billion to the US government to cover damages caused by the disaster. It is considered the largest settlement with a single entity in American history. Apart from this settlement, BP has spent a reported $28 billion on cleanup and compensation for their criminal negligence. The Deepwater Horizon disaster is considered by many to be the worst oil spill in US history. The spill occurred when an offshore oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, dumping 4.9 million barrels of oil into the surrounding waters. The explosion killed 11 people and devastated marine wildlife in the area. BP was found to be in gross negligence for not testing the only safety measure they had available for deepwater drilling accidents. BP continued to lie about their unpreparedness and criminal cover-up. The massive oil slick still exists and has yet to be properly managed or cleaned up. America will never fully recover from this disaster. BP, British pirates, carelessness for gross profit costs America more than money can recover. Okay, I'm starting to read a bit. I'm going to have to finish up after this article, guys, but this is a very interesting bit of information here. Shell Oil Company. Shell Oil Company is a United States-based wholly owned subsidiary of Royal Dutch Shell, a multinational oil company of Anglo-Dutch origins, which is amongst the largest oil companies in the world. Shell Oil is wholly owned by British interests. Approximately 22,000 Shell employees are based in the US. The US headquarters are in Houston, Texas. Shell Oil Company, including its consolidated companies and its share in equity companies, is one of America's largest oil and natural gas producers, natural gas marketers, gasoline marketers, and petrochemical manufacturers. Shell is the market leader through approximately 25,000 Shell-branded gas stations in the US, which also serves as Shell's most visible public presence. At its gas stations, Shell provides diesel fuels, gasoline, and LPG. Shell Oil Company was a 50-50 partner with the Saudi Arabian government-owned oil company, Saudi Aramco, in Motiva Enterprises, a refining and marketing joint venture which owns and operates 3 oil refineries on the Gulf Coast of the United States. Shell products include oils, fuels and car services, as well as exploration, production and refining of petroleum products. The Shell Oil Refinery in Martinez, California, the first Shell refinery in the United States, supplies Shell and Texaco stations in the West and Midwest. After Texaco merged with Chevron in 2001, Shell purchased Texaco's shares in the joint ventures. In 2002, Shell began converting these Texaco stations to the Shell brand, a process that was to be completed by June 2004 and was called the largest retail rebranding initiative in American business history. Shell's crimes. Shell Puget Sound Refinery Anna Courts, Washington, was fined $291,000 from 2006 to 2010 for violations of the Clean Air Act, making it the second most fined violator in the Pacific Northwest. As of 2011, it was listed as high priority violator since 2008. In 2008, a lawsuit was filed against Shell Oil Company for Clean Air Act violation. Shell Deer Park facility, 20 miles east of Houston, was the nation's 8th largest oil refinery and one of the world's largest petrochemical producers. The facility was also the second largest source of air pollution in Harris County, which ranked among the lowest in the nation in several measures of air quality. Between 1978 and 1995, Shell Oil produced polybutylene pipes which corrode when exposed to chlorine. A class action lawsuit was filed in 1995 against Shell Oil when the polybutylene pipes caused flooding in many households in the USA and Canada. The settlement requires Shell Oil to pay for the reinstallation of piping for millions of houses for claims filed through May 2009. Well, let's get into British American tobacco. Do you know our cigarettes here in Australia for a packet of 25 is $50? And do you know duty free? They are $13. So tell me again how much tax the government is making from each packet of cigarettes. And you can include oil, our petrol, and you can include alcohol in that too. The price is always pushed up because of our high taxes here. Okay, British American Tobacco. British American Tobacco PCL BAT is a British multinational tobacco company headquartered in London. It is the largest publicly traded tobacco company in the world. BAT has a primary listing on the London Stock Exchange. And I can tell you right now, they make most Australian cigarettes too. BAT has a market-leading position in over 50 countries and operations in around 180 countries. Its 4 largest selling brands are its native brand Dunhill and US brands Lucky Strike, Kent and Pall Mall. Others of the company markets include Benson & Hedges and Rothmans, which we know most of them here too. And we have Winfield as well. The company was formed in 1902 when the United Kingdom's Imperial Tobacco Company and the United States American Tobacco Company agreed to form a joint venture. The British American Tobacco Company, Ltd, in 1911, the American Tobacco Company sold its share of the company. In 1911, the American Tobacco Company, sold its share of the company. Imperial Tobacco gradually reduced its shareholding, but it was not until 1980 that it divested its remaining interests in the company. In July 2004, the US business of British American Tobacco, Brown and Williamson, was combined with that of R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, R.J. Reynolds under the R.J. Reynolds name. R.J. Reynolds and Brown and Williamson were the second and third ranking US tobacco companies prior to the combination. When they combined, R.J. Reynolds became a subsidiary of Reynolds American with BAT holding 42% share. In 2017, BAT bought the remaining 57.8% of US cigarette maker Reynolds American in a $49.4 billion takeover that would create the world's biggest listed tobacco company with brands including Newport, Lucky Strike and Pall Mall. Over 6 million people worldwide die to tobacco death each year. The British don't seem to mind that this industry kills more people per year than all the wars combined. There have been no class action suit against BAT in the UK. Do you know why tobacco kills people? Well, here in Australia, we actually know that they have 4,000 added chemicals to that's not natural tobacco. It has been deeply chemicalized, and I believe that is the reason why tobacco kills so many people every year. And it only came out after this takeover. I only found out in the last 10 years. Okay, ICAP, the world's largest interdealer broker. ICAP was the largest interdealer broker for the over-the-counter OTC trading. In 2016, ICAP sold its global broker business to the bridge brokerage firm Tullett Prebon. which retained the ICAP brand, and ICAP rebranded the remaining non-brokerage part of the business as Next Group. ICAP had daily transaction volume of more than $2.3 trillion at 50 locations in 32 countries and offered both voice-driven and electronic brokerage systems plus post-trade services. It provided wholesale brokerage on a range of interest rates, credit derivatives, commodities, foreign exchange, emerging markets, equities, and equity derivatives. More than 40% of its trading occurred on its two electronic trading platforms, BrokerTech and EBS, which merged to become EBS BrokerTech. ICAP offers a range of OTC over-the-counter financial products and services in energy, foreign exchange, interest rates, credit and equity markets, and indices. For each of these asset classes, ICAP electronic capability gives customers the choice to enter prices and execute trades electronically, directly via one of ICAP's electronic trading systems, or to engage with brokers to identify and help negotiate trades. According to its 2013 annual report, its electronic broking volume for 2013 reached $728.3 billion. ICAP becomes TP ICAP. ICAP is a global firm of professional intermediaries that operates in the world's financial, energy and commodities markets. It is listed on the London Stock Exchange and is a constituent of the FTSE 250 index. In November 2015, the company agreed to terms with ICAP, now known as Next Group, to acquire their local hybrid voice broking and information business. Using the name of the acquired business, the company changed its names from Tollett Prebon plc to TP ICAP plc on 30th December 2016. ICAP crimes. On September the 25th, 2013, ICAP was fined a total of $87 million, including a $65 million settlement with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, and a $22 million settlement with Britain's Financial Conduct Authority as part of an investigation into the manipulation of the LIBOR benchmark interest rate. The ICAP fine was in addition to settlements paid by British lenders Barclays and the Royal Bank of Scotland, as well as UBS of Switzerland, of a combined $2.5 billion related to the LIBOR scandal. ICAP was the first interdealer broker fined for rigging the LIBOR, or LIBOR, however you want to say it. In June 2014, ICAP received an antitrust complaint from the EU's antitrust arm, alleging it facilitated a cartel to manipulate yen LIBOR. The complaint alleged that ICAP acted as a facilitator to breaches of EU competition law by certain banks in relation to yen LIBOR for isolated periods between 2007 and 2010. The UK and Silicon Valley. The UK is the leading European destination for Silicon Valley investors, with British tech companies raising more venture capital from Bay Area VCs than any other European country. According to the investment data released by London and Partners over the last 5 years, UK tech companies have received more venture capital investment from West Coast investors than France, Germany and Ireland combined. Silicon Valley investors continue to pump large sums of money into UK tech companies despite Brexit, with 2017 already seeing a record of $1.13 billion raised since the beginning of the year. The findings have been released to mark the start of Silicon Valley Comes to the US, a week-long series of events bringing together leading figures from the Bay Area and UK tech scenes. Further analysis of the investment data reveals that London tech companies received the majority of venture capital investment from the Bay Area, accounting for over 90% or $1.04 billion of the total amount raised by UK tech companies this year. Maybe this was written in 2017, I think. Over the last 5 years, London tech firms have also raised considerably more capital, $2.5 billion, than their European counterparts. London's thriving VC market has been boosted by the number of unicorn companies based in the capital, with separate research from investment firm GP Bullhound, revealing that London is home to more unicorns than any other European city. Fresh analysis of its 2017's Titans of Tech report found that London accounts for almost 1/3 of all unicorns in Europe, with 17 out of the 53 unicorns founded in London. Rio Tinto and resource fleecing. Rio Tinto Energy America, RTEA, was a wholly owned American subsidiary of the England and Australia-based mining giant, the Rio Tinto Group, headquartered in Gillette, Wyoming, United States. The company, previously known as Kennecott Energy after another of Rio Tinto's American subsidiaries, was formed in 1933 when Rio Tinto purchased Nurco and placed that company's Spring Creek coal mine and Antelope coal mine under the RTEA umbrella. Subsequent acquisitions included the Cordero Mining Company, the Colo-Wyo Coal Company, and the Jacobs Ranch Coal Mine. RTEA operated 4 mines in Wyoming and Montana, supplying fuel for the generation of approximately 6% of the United States electricity consumption. The RTEA mines were spun off to Cloud Peak Energy in 2010. Boron. The heart of Rio Tinto's borates business is the open pit mine in Boron, California, one of 2 world-class borate deposits on the planet. Company founders began mining borates in 1872. What began as an underground mine was transformed into an open pit mine in 1957. Resolution. The Resolution Copper Project is a proposed copper mine that can supply the world with copper it needs to support ongoing technological and environmental innovation. The project will generate sustainable benefits for Arizona, creating several thousand direct and indirect jobs, and is expected to have an economic value of several $1 billion over the estimated life of the mine. Rio Tinto Kennecott. Rio Tinto Kennecott is a fully integrated mining operation located just outside Salt Lake City, Utah, in the US. Kennecott is a wholly owned subsidiary of Rio Tinto. For more than 110 years, Kennecott has been mining and processing minerals from the rich ore body of the Bingham Canyon Mine. In 1989, Rio Tinto acquired the Bingham Canyon Mine and other facilities in Salt Lake Valley. Rio Tinto crimes. The top US securities regulator rejected arguments by Rio Tinto plc and 2 former top executives that its civil lawsuit claiming they concealed the plunging value of coal assets owned by the big Anglo-Australian mining company should be dismissed. In letters filed in the US District Court in Manhattan, the Securities and Exchange Commission said its complaint adequately alleged that fraud occurred and that Rio Tinto former Chief Executive Thomas Albanese and former Chief Financial Officer Guy Elliott intended to deceive investors. I wonder if Thomas Albanese is related to Anthony Albanese. Okay. I'm going to write that down. The SEC accused Rio Tinto of ignoring the need to write down most of the value of Mozambique coal assets it had bought for $3.7 billion in April 2011, while it was raising thoroughly $5.5 billion from US investors. Okay, I just paused to see if Thomas Albanese was related to Anthony Albanese, one of our Labour leader. I think he is. Oh my God. Anyway, they probably are somewhere related. Okay, Rio Tinto wrote off most of the value in January 2013 and sold the assets in late 2014 for just $50 million. It said that Rio Tinto had Rio Tinto properly written down the assets, its net earnings for the first half of 2012 would have been reduced by more than 50%. Canadian CGI Group. The total price tag for Obamacare's main enrollment portal cost Americans more than $2 billion, according to an analysis by Bloomberg Government. What's Bloomberg Government? Is that in Canada? Okay. The new total includes efforts to construct and then fix healthcare.gov after serious technical problems threatened to shatter the site last fall. Who was the pathetic corporation that gouged Americans? A Canadian company called CGI, Consultants to Government and Industries. Don't forget the British Crown owns large stakes in most Canadian national businesses due to being part of the British Commonwealth. The Queen always had her first choice of stocks in any Commonwealth country, especially Canada. Americans were not happy with the exorbitant costs charged by CGI, nor the fact that a Canadian company ripped off US taxpayers and created an ineffective portal that a high school student would have done a better job creating. Congressman Issa has this to say about the debacle. $2 billion is an awful lot to pay for a website with lingering security issues that transfers the costs of healthcare from customers to taxpayers, said House Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa Caliph in a statement. If this were private enterprise, the CEO would have been fired and company shareholders would be suing, he added. But in this administration, there's no high-level accountability, and the focus remains fixated on signing up as many Americans as possible regardless of the cost, security risks, or the impact on the quality of healthcare for all Americans. CGI Group Inc., Consultants to Government and Industries, more commonly known as CGI, is the Canadian Global Information Technology Consulting Systems Integration, Outsourcing and Solutions Company, headquartered in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. CGI purchased American Management Systems, AMS, for $858 million in 2004, which grew CGI's presence in the United States. CGI's federal 2010 acquisition of Stanley Inc. for $1.07 billion almost doubled CGI's presence in the United States and expanded in CGI into defence and intelligence contracts. In 2012, CGI acquired Logica for $2.7 billion Canadian dollars, making CGI the fifth largest independent business process and IT service provider in the world and the biggest tech firm in Canada. In 2016, CGI ranked number 955 on the Forbes Global 2000. At the time, CGI had assets worth $20.9 billion Canadian dollars, annual sales of $10.7 billion, and a market value of $9.6 billion. As of 2017, GCI is based in 40 countries with around 400 offices and employs approximately 70,000 people. As much as 29% of CGI's business comes from the United States. Serco, British control our sensitive data. Queen Elizabeth II owns and controls US data management, corporate banking, resources of gas, uranium, gold, and many strategic resources and systems in the US. This system of control is called Serco and is essentially a Crown agent. Serco is not only an enemy of the United States, but an enemy of countries and people around the world. For example, did you know that US Patent Office is controlled by Serco? That's right. A British-based company controls the creative efforts of American entrepreneurs and creators. Serco was the company awarded the Obamagate data management system that cost Americans over $2 billion. That's right. SES employees in charge of selecting contracts for this lucrative data management system couldn't find any US-based companies to do the work. Instead, they cherry-picked their buddies at British-owned and controlled Serco to deliver Obamacare management. And this is what they do with everything. Here are a few insights of what Serco does already in our government. To our friends in other parts of the world, don't be surprised when you see similar structures in your own country run by the British monarch through Serco. Serco manages all patents for the US Patent and Trademark Office. Brits have the first shot at stealing Americans' intellectual property rights. This is shocking, but true. Serco controls the most sensitive data management system in all branches of the military, federal government, and state and local municipalities. Serco controls air traffic management, airline security, airport management, and all aspects of ticketing, visa data management, and timetable management. Serco is called the largest company no one's ever heard of. Serco's efficiency rating in England, Canada and Australia is below 65%, and many lawsuits have been filed against the company for egregious fraud and mismanagement. Serco was paid $1.2 billion to manage the data of Obamacare, a British company handling Americans' private health medical information. Serco goes by many names, so always look under the hood in their corporate documents to find its trail back to Queen Lizzie. In America, it operates as Serco Inc., and it claims on its website that it is a leading provider of professional technology and management services for the federal government. Headquartered in Reston, Virginia, Serco Inc. has approximately 10,000 employees, annual revenue of $2.5 billion, and is ranked in the top 35 of the largest federal prime contractors. Piercing the corporate veil, we find that Serco Inc. is a wholly owned subsidiary of Serco Group plc, a $7 billion international business that works with government and public services around the world. Many researchers say that Serco runs the United Kingdom, the UK, the United States, Canada, and Australia. Serco has over 60,000 people in 35 countries across the world. To our international readers, it's highly doubtful that they are not operating in your country. Serco is a leading provider of public services of all types. Serco operates internationally across 5 sectors and 4 geographies: defence, justice, immigration, transportation, health and human services. Its services are delivered in UK, Europe, North America, Asia Pacific and the Middle East. Serco delivers record management and process support services for many US government agencies. Major programs include processing and classifying of patent applications for the US Patent and Trademark Office, records management and process of applications and petitions at US Citizenship and Immigration Service centers, processing visa applications at the US Department of State's National Visa Center and Kentucky Consular Center, and record management services at the US Citizenship and Immigration Services National Benefits Center, among many others. 90% of Serco's business is with the federal government, with 10,000 workers across 45 states. Serco's experience is in paper pushing, records management, process applications, processing visas, handling patents with the US Patent and Trademark Office. There are more than 60 million records that Serco handles for the Department of Homeland Security. Serco Inc. is indeed part of the Serco Group, an international contracting firm headquartered near London and partly owned by the UK government itself. Serco Inc. is the North America division of Serco Group plc. In North America, Serco Inc. serves federal, state and local governments along with the Canadian government and commercial customers, and over 14,000 in North Americas. Digest that for a moment. US federal records, personal medical records, patents and visas are held by a company owned and directed by the British monarch. Its soldiers on the ground are employees of SES. These SES employees guarantee that Serco gets the contract and then manages and oversees their continued involvement. The UK is suing Serco for the alleged theft of $80 billion. UK officials have been investigating Serco and found the company is only effective 65% of the time. Serco has been found out to be corrupt from top to bottom. Is that a surprise? I mean, look at our countries. If these people are running half of our public works services, we are in deep doo-doo. Many mistakes of data management have also happened in the United States that have caused terrible disasters and multiple deaths. Serco manages services for the military and government that are incredibly sensitive and should be trusted to no one else but the United States of America. Finally, winning the American Revolution. We are not a sovereign nation with our arrangement with the British government and UK-based corporations. It seems we are still subjects of the British monarchy in many ways. The American corporate mechanism for the continued enrichment of the British Crown is the same one used for the corporate sellout of the American Republic, corporate lobbyists controlling Congress, corporate pay-to-play through the executive branch, such as Hillary's Department of State, and the Senior Executive Service, SES, to maintain the bureaucratic status quo, selling out to global corporatism at every turn with no big contracts and cronyism. The Senior Executive Service and Serco are the people and organisational systems that the British monarchy uses to control America through economic cronyism that bolsters the continued economic slavery of Americans to foreign powers. The Senior Executive Service aligns with the imperialistic intents of Serco and the numerous other corporations that we have described in this intelligence report. BP, Shell, ICAP, British American Tobacco, Rio Tinto, etc. It's time to send the redcoats running home to Queen Lizzie and finally end the American Revolution against British tyranny. It's time to notice that the UK is not our friend and we should not be sharing intelligence with the Five Eyes community: UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the USA. Now, they're not talking about the people of the UK, okay? They're talking about the governments and the agents in control, not us normal people, okay? I agree with them, and I think every country should get these people out. That's what we need. And then we'll be doing okay if we can get these people out of our countries. We need to bring our wealth back home to America and stop using taxpayer dollars to fund Crown assets in whatever form they take. American freedom and independence does not need the dead weight of archaic monarchies that believe they should always get their golden share before the commoners get their crumb. We must throw off the shackles that have tied the British Crown to American economic affairs. We do not need to pay taxes to the Crown any longer. We simply must choose American companies to do American work and stop the senior executive service from giving higher priority to Crown agents and British corporate interests. And I agree. Hear, hear, is what I say. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there for today because it's already gone for an hour. Oh my goodness, an hour and a half video, guys. That must be a record for me, unless it's a live, which I can go a little bit longer normally on a live, which I really should do soon. I'll have to see what I can do. Okay, guys, let me know what you think of all this down below. Has this opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, or did you already know all this? I knew some of it, but it has still opened my eyes a tiny bit as to how deep it actually goes. And you can let me know that down below, guys. And I'll finish that off there for today. I hope you have a good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay, guys. Bye.